I'm Mary Schuster, Chief Product Officer and EVP of Regulatory Affairs with RamQuest, here to talk to you today about the new closing disclosure form from the CFPB. In the past, federal law required two different disclosure forms to be provided to consumers at or shortly before their loan closing. The information on these forms, known as the final TIL and HUD-1, was overlapping and often inconsistent. Consumers often found the forms confusing. The Dodd-Frank Act directed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, to integrate these mortgage loan disclosures into a new, single, consolidated disclosure form. As a result, the closing disclosure form is a 5-page form that is due to the borrower for review 3 days prior to the closing or settlement in an escrow state. It is due to the seller not later than the day of closing or settlement. The lender or creditor is responsible for delivering the closing disclosure, or CD, to the borrower, also the consumer, but creditors may engage the services of a settlement agent to provide the CD so long as they comply with the provisions of the rule. The rule creating these new requirements is known as the Integrated Mortgage Disclosure Rule, or TRID, and it applies to most closed-ended mortgage transactions except home equity lines of credit, reverse mortgages, and true mobile home loans, when the dwelling is not attached to the land, or seller financing where the creditor makes 5 or fewer mortgages in a year. Let's take a look at the first page of the closing disclosure form to see what information is presented first to the borrower. Page 1 of the closing disclosure presents an overview of key loan information that the CFPB views most important for the borrower to understand. 3 important elements included on the first page include the interest rate, monthly payment amount, and the amount of cash needed for closing. The layout of information on page 1 matches almost identically the first page of information on the initial loan disclosure, called the loan estimate. The borrower is to have received their loan estimate, or LE, within 3 business days after making their loan application. This continuity is intentional with the goal of bringing clarity to borrowers and highlighting the most important facets of their loan terms. In the top section, we see basic transaction information including closing date, property address and sale price, borrower and seller name and their address, and loan information. In the loan terms section is where the loan amount, interest rate, monthly principal and interest amount values appear. After each is a yes or no question of can this amount increase after closing. If yes, there will be more descriptive language. If no, there is no more language needed. Next, we see fields for does the amount have a prepayment penalty or balloon payment feature. Again, if yes, more descriptive language will be added. If no, the section is complete. For the projected payments table, this is the first of several areas of the form that we see will expand or contract based on the specifics of the loan being disclosed. If, for example, it is a 30-year fixed interest rate with no mortgage insurance, there would only be one projected payments column. It would show years 1 through 30 with a principal and interest amount fixed for that 30 years. If there was an impound account on the mortgage, that would be disclosed as well. In this example, we are looking at a 30-year fixed mortgage that does have mortgage insurance. We see 2 projected payments amount, years 1 through 7 with the MI included, and then years 8 through 30 with the MI discontinued. Your lender will calculate and advise as to the information that should be included here. You just need to be aware of which scenario your CD is reflecting. This section can expand to include up to 5 projected payment estimates. If there is an impound account for the escrows, the bottom section of the projected payments table will show how much is being deposited into each month and which payable expenses are included in the impound. In the closing costs section on page 1, closing costs is a total of closing costs less any lender credits. The breakdown is available on page 2 for more detail. Cash to close is a quick reference for the amount of the wire for the funds that the borrower needs to send in for their closing. The details of how that number was arrived at are available on page 3 of the CD. If this number is negative, this is the amount of cash back that the borrower will receive as a result of the closing. Now that we've had an overview of page 1, let's move on to page 2, where the details really start to emerge. Page 2 provides a breakdown of the closing cost details and lists the loan costs paid by the borrower, seller, and other parties. Sections A through D contain loan costs. Sections E through H contain other costs. Each line contains a description name for the fee. Moving across the page, there are 5 columns for fee amounts. They are borrower paid at or before closing, seller paid at or before closing, and paid by others. Moving from the top of the form down and looking down the page at each of the alphabetical sections, we see they are grouped as follows. Section A is for origination charges. Section B is for services required in conjunction with the loan, and the borrower either did not or was not allowed to shop for the service provider. Section C is for services required in conjunction with the loan, and the borrower did shop for the service provider. Section D is a sum of the totals in sections A through C. Section E is for recording fees and transfer taxes. Section F is for prepaid items. Section G is for initial amounts going in to set up the impounds or escrow account at the lender. Section H is for other charges pertaining to the transaction. Section I is a sum of the totals from sections E through H. Section J shows total closing costs less any lender credits. No 2 CDs will be the same, and no page 2s will be the same, so be sure to check and follow your lender's closing instructions carefully. You should also learn and follow the TRID rule carefully, especially as it pertains to the disclosure of all title and settlement related fees. Here at Old Republic Title, we are here to help you with all of your TRID and closing disclosure form related questions. Now let's look at what's covered on page 3 of the CD. Page 3 of the CD displays a calculating cash to close table at the top. This is similar to an estimated cash to close table the borrower first saw soon after loan application on their loan estimate form. The cash to close table on the CD provides a comparison to the estimated numbers provided on the LE for an at-a-glance comparison for the borrower. If there was a change to the amount between the LE and the CD, additional language is required on the CD to guide the borrower back to the section of the form that shows the greater detail. The bottom 2/3 of the page 3 contains the summaries of the transaction for both buyer and seller. This area is formatted with section K as debits from the buyer and section M as credits to the seller. Section L contains credits to the buyer, and section N shows seller debits. Some lines in these sections are designated for specific items. For example, line N4 is for the payoff of a seller's first mortgage. Earnest money on deposit would be shown on line L1. The buyer's new loan proceeds should appear on L2. There are additional specific lines designated depending on the scenario. So as always, check the TRID rule and your lender's instructions carefully. Next, we'll review page 4 of the CD. Page 4 of the CD covers loan-centric disclosure information, including whether the loan may be assumable, whether the loan has a demand feature, whether the loan has a late payment fee, and if so, when that would be imposed, or how the amount of the fee will be calculated, whether the loan has a negative amortization feature, whether the lender will accept partial payments. It reminds the borrower that the lender will have a security interest in the real property until the loan is paid off. If there is an escrow account on the loan, page 4 also shows which items are included in the impound account and the amount to be collected each month for the item. Finally, if the loan has an adjustable payment or interest rate, one or both of the adjustable tables will be included in the bottom of page 4. If the loan does not have those features, those tables are not required to appear. Next, we will look at the last page of the CD, page 5. The fifth and final page of the CD contains several types of information. In the top left section is a set of loan information titled Loan Calculations. For the borrower, this information includes total of payments, finance charge, amount financed, APR, total interest percentage. On the right-hand side of page 5, under Other Disclosures, the borrower will find information including information about their right to a copy of the appraisal, prompts or reminders about understanding repayment requirements and consequences, a brief statement about the potential for liability after foreclosure, and a note about refinancing as well as tax deductions. In the middle of page 5 is contact information for the CFPB, including a link to the Complaint Center. However, the primary intention of the contact information grid is to give consumers a thorough, current, and centralized Rolodex of the professional stakeholders so that when questions or needs arise, we can be accessible and accountable to our customers' needs. That's why contact information and licensure numbers are included in this section. Finally, you'll want to pay close attention to the signature block on this form and the language that accompanies it. Be aware that it is up to the lender whether or not this signature block appears at all, as it does on this example, or whether disclosure language similar to it appears on the other disclosure section on page 5 in the upper right-hand section. This is another of many areas where you'll want to be TRID smart, TRID aware, and reach out for help when help is needed. TRID has brought about many new ways of engaging and informing consumers about their real estate mortgage transactions. While there is much to learn and much to do, Old Republic Title is right beside you every step of the way.